Right. Welcome to Stereo Psych. I'm Stephen Downey. I'm a clinical psychologist from Australia. Just sort of going through Reddit posts is what we've been doing recently, and yeah, breaking them down, sort of showing you the thinking process of how a psychologist would approach some of these things, the sorts of things that stand out to me, and demonstrating, I guess, the kind of thinking style that we approach some of these issues with. Obviously, we're not addressing the actual thing at hand, rather the principles around it, the thinking around it, and sort of treatment directions. Nothing I say could be specific to this thing. I don't know most of what's going on in these, so we kind of use them as I guess, a springboard to, yeah, think about how we would approach something like this. Feel free to submit things in the comments for review if you want me to have a look at something. I'm always open to reviewing that kind of stuff. Like it if you like it, and subscribe if you want to see more like this. The way that we normally do this is we just go to the top one. It looks like this one here that isn't an update, and we just sort of, I'll be reading it from beginning to end. All right, this could take a little while. Read it from beginning to end, and then sort of break it down from there. So, haven't forgotten anything. I don't think so. Link will be in the description for the one that we're doing today. So, am I the asshole for not forgiving my military father who thought my mother cheated on him? I'm an 18-year-old male. My father used to work in the military. He had left my mother for a long time throughout her pregnancy, a good 2 years into my birth. So when he came back, he got a 2 years old son. He was sure I was not his, but his neighbor's, because the neighbor used to help out my mother. My mother never agreed to a paternity test. Well, he could still have done it, but she was very clear that she would drag him through hell if he did that. She said she did not cheat on him. He has no evidence of it and no reasonable logic behind it. If he can't trust her, then the marriage is over. He can sign her half of his everything and go look for a new wife. He never behaved badly with her. People say he loves her or something, but in his eyes, I was the evidence. He blamed me for everything. He never let me call him dad, never hugged me or picked me up. I've always been an eyesore for him. Somehow they didn't divorce, but I've always seen them fighting because of me. My dad would do something neglectful towards me. My mother would call it out. They'd start arguing, and it would end with my mother shouting and crying that he still believes that she cheated on him. Then my father would apologize and comfort her, but my mother did take care of me well until my brother was born. My brother Jack was born when I was 11. Things got worse for me since then. It's not like they were really abusing me. He never raised his voice or beat me. I was fed, clothed, tuition fees paid, I had a roof over my head, but that was all. My mother stopped putting any effort towards sticking up for me. If he does something mean with me, she would just avoid it. I was the huge pink elephant in the room. Bringing me up would always start a fight. I guess she got tired of constantly fighting for me and chose peace, aka avoiding my existence. He would call Jack his son pointedly at the dining table when I'm eating with them. At first, my mother used to say, "But Evan is your son too, honey." Now she would just eat silently or change the topic. When introducing to new people, he would say, "This is my son Jack, and this is Evan." He would never show up at any event regarding me. I was despised in the community. It's a small town. People would whisper behind my back, "Isn't that the illegitimate boy?" Yeah, poor dude. He was sacrificing his life for the country while his wife was sleeping around. I was very clear that I would move out when I turned 18 and go no contact with them. They did not object. My mother said something like, "Oh, but you should visit us sometimes." But he said when I turn into an adult, I should actually also be one. I should make my own fortune and not sit around hoping to get stuff from him. I turned 18 on the 27th of last month, and I will go to another state when this month ends. I'll stay at a friend's place there and hopefully find a job. I've saved up some money. It's not much, but I guess I can manage for a few months. Before doing that, I wanted to see the paternity test done. I thought it would give me a sense of closure. My mother also agreed, though reluctantly, when I said I wanted to do it. And now comes the part most of you probably already seen coming. Yeah, turns out I'm his after all. Mother is in the "I told you so" mood. He is devastated, I guess, for all those years wasted on hatred, poor guy. Now he wants to make up to me. He's begging me to stay. He says he's sorry, he's made a mistake. I'm not budging. I'm not letting him get, I'm not, I'm not letting him know what state I'm going to, what I will do, or any of my contact info. He didn't feel like keeping them before. He doesn't need to now. I've also told him I will never tell my children about him. I will never show him my face, as I promised, and I will never accept anything from him. Well, he has told about this to everyone to convince me to stay, or at least to stay in contact. I told them he's not my father. Everyone is saying I'm being unnecessarily cruel to a person who's made a mistake. It's not his fault. The situation was like that. Um, this is actually reasonably straightforward. So first off, the things that draw my attention. This person is 18, and we need to bear that in mind when we look at a situation like this. So I was despised in the community. It's small town, people whispering behind my back and stuff like that. Unfortunately, people can get a little bit of like main character syndrome in their own life, where they believe that other people are paying far more attention than what they actually are. It's not to say that it's impossible that this could happen. It's that, generally speaking, when people share these sorts of details, they are sharing it. It feels truthful from their perspective, but it is not an accurate view of what's going on in the community. Realistically, the most likely option here is nobody cared. They forgot about it about 16 years ago. There'll be a few people who remember, and it matters nothing in their life. But to this individual, it matters a lot. Where are we? So essentially, I'd actually jump to the end here. I rarely start at the end, but this idea of going no contact, moving to a different state, and feeling like, this person essentially who has treated him so badly, he owes nothing to. That's actually because you owe nothing to this person. Essentially, your attachment systems, he was still young enough when he got back into your life to be built properly into your attachment systems as a essentially secondary attachment figure. So I'm not looking at this person going, oh, there's some like real potential for serious emotional harm. He's had a connected mother right the way up until 11. Now, generally speaking, the research on this is very unclear, but 11 is about the furthest that we would push some of the development of some of these, like, let's just say, emotion-based trauma syndromes, right? Again, I can hear the peanut gallery screaming about this. That's what I've seen in the research. I believe I can back up saying that if you can have a decent attachment with your primary caregiver up to age 11, you're probably pretty protected from most of, let's say, the personality-based features of things. It's not to say that it doesn't hurt. It's not to say that it doesn't matter. It's to say that he's actually been given a pretty decent head start here in terms of I guess there being protective factors around him developing some of the more serious personality features of what could happen out of a situation like this. It looks like the relationship with mother is good throughout, though obviously that breaks down and she stops protecting him, and that has an impact on the relationship. Yep. As well as when he goes no contact, where is it? He's basically saying he's not going to see his mother either. And you can see that this is, consequences of one's own actions. I look at this kind of a situation and go, okay, there's a few different exit ramps, right? It's not necessarily wrong for the dad to be suspicious about whether or not this child is his, right? So he comes and he brings that suspicion and says, I'd like to have it confirmed. Mother doesn't agree to a paternity test. Does she have to? No. But what does it cost her? Very little. Very little. And essentially, by doing this, this sort of closes that exit ramp. And we're still barreling down that pathway of hurt. She continues to fight with his father over him all the time, and we can see that. We can see the way that he sort of introduces his son as different. We can see the way that it's at the table, and Evan is like, this is a dude for whom this is like the father for whom this is a big issue, and this person is just a living reminder of the cheating that has previously occurred. Exit ramps, maturity, God forbid that the bloke could realize that whether or not this person is his son, he is the father figure in his life and be the bigger person, doesn't really cross his mind. And of course we have a child in this who, given the persistence of his father in saying, you're not mine, appears to come to believe that for himself to the extent where he wants that question solved, and he gets that question solved before he leaves. Yeah, that's good. It's nice to have that closure and to be able to go, you know what? He did treat me like shit, and it's entirely his fault. And yeah, he could have done differently, because at the end of the day, I was his son. I always look at these sorts of situations and kind of go, let's just assume it's not your son. What do you get out of treating the child this way? You know, you're still continuing a relationship with the mother. Why is the child at fault? And I find this to be a frustratingly common sort of man logic of some kind, that somehow the children are deserving of mistreatment and neglect because of some perceived failing in the other parent. And it's like, I just do not understand how blokes think. I look at these situations and just sort of go, what level of immaturity does this bloke have that this is where he gets to? It's not the way, you know. Outside of that, you know, where do we get to? Well, he's leaving. Good luck. I wish you all the best in your life. What a horrible introduction to life. And yeah, maybe you do need to go and have at least a period of time of sort of, being away from this kind of a home situation. That's got to be toxic, just sort of living in that kind of a situation for 18 years. Well, 16, because his dad wasn't in his life essentially until he was 2. So fair enough. Let's say 16 years. It's still a rubbish way to go. What don't we know about this situation? So there's a lot that we're told. There's not a huge amount of things that I look at here and go, what don't I know? Nothing actually really stands out to me as a thing that I would need to know in working with this 18-year-old man. If somebody was to present up to me in this sort of a situation and they gave me this as their history, I'll be like, yep, okay, I feel like I understand it. Where are you and where do you want to go from here? I don't have a time machine. You don't have a time machine. We can't fix this. So where to from here? And if he's just sort of saying, right, I want to go and, cut him off and blah, 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 we'd be having some discussions around, okay, yes, let's just accept that. But why? What do you get out of it? Right? Because living your life out of vengeance doesn't get you very far. It really is. You are losing opportunities for support. You are losing opportunities that would be good for you emotionally in terms of, let's say, hypothetically, actually repairing your relationship with your parents. That would be potentially good for this person, and we are foregoing that opportunity. And so we need to think about, let's just assume that you do this. What do you get out of it? And this is not a discussion of saying, you're wrong, change your mind. This is about sort of, I guess, putting the pros and cons on the table to say, what are you getting? What are you losing? And are you sure? Because, again, I started this by saying we have an 18-year-old man in front of us. What do I know for certain sure sitting down in front of this person? I know the consequences part of their brain is not fully developed, and yet they feel like an adult. And it's like, okay, how can I use the consequences part of my brain that is fully developed to just help this person to consider in a way that their brain is literally not yet able to do, right? And so my role would partially be a bouncing board. Obviously we need to get some of the feelings out and start, some of the processing around the last 16 years of his life. That's not great, but then we need to think about the pathway forward and what he's potentially losing by doing what he's doing, and again, there are no easy answers here, but that would be what I would be looking at with somebody like this is sort of my private thoughts in the back of my head would be, okay, this person can't fully think out the consequences of their own actions yet. And so I need to be a bit of a sounding board to help them make a better decision than they can make on their own without biasing them as we go about. So just sort of being a reflecting board that is willing to add information that I don't believe they've considered and see if I can help to make sure that they've considered as much of the situation as they can before they go ahead with a pathway. That would be the primary way forward that I'd be looking at with something like this. Right. Am I the asshole for not forgiving my father? No, you are the recipient of a rubbish situation. I would look at this and go, okay, is your mother potentially an asshole for not agreeing to a paternity test? Yes, because she's thinking of herself and not you, and she signed you up to a lifetime of hurt. What would have happened? He would have got the paternity test. She would have gone, see, you don't trust me. They could have fought it out like adults. And if at that point they decide, right, we're done, we're finished, move on, they've done the adult thing, right? Instead, by her choosing not to do that, she hands the problem over to you, right? But that doesn't get the father off the hook in any way, shape, or form. Notwithstanding, you're in a situation where, as the father, you do not have evidence. You only have a feeling. You do not have evidence of your wife's cheating. In fact, we find out later she hasn't. At which point, you've got to figure out, can I trust this woman and work with this relationship, or can I not? Right? Because he has other pathways available to him. I believe that if he had divorced her, he would no longer have needed her permission to do a paternity test, and he could have answered his own questions. You know, in which case he would then be able to go back to her and say, had you done this, none of this needed to happen. Right? But the problem is, because they don't work it out like adults here, he gets 16 years of hell. Right? So is he the asshole? No, there's two assholes in the story, and neither of them are him. I'm left curious as to what Jack's experience of life is. Like, that's got to be a bit funky. And I'm just looking at that age gap as well. Born when he's 11, Jack's only like 7 or 8 years old. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. Begging me to stay, etc. Yes, blokes are just, when they figure out that they're wrong, sometimes they grow a shred of humility. I don't expect this person is in any state of mind at this point to go chasing him up on that kind of an offer. So, bit of a wait and see. Yeah, and pathway forward, like I say, it's really just that consideration of the future. When I get somebody in this sort of a situation, I'm not really interested in the past. And that's a decision that's going to vary from psychologist to psychologist. I'm not a psychologist that spends a lot of time on people's past. Partially, that's got to do with the Medicare model in Australia means I usually have very limited time with people. I'm not going to waste that by sort of thinking about the past. That is just not what I'm going to waste somebody. Usually, we only got 10 sessions per year covered. So if I was to see somebody like this with very limited time, I'm not looking at that. Other people go back to the past to sort of heal some trauma, etc. As much as I would consider this to be traumatic in the sense of that it's an extreme emotional experience over a long period of time, certainly chronic stress involved, stuff like that. I wouldn't necessarily consider that there's like trauma embedded in this that needs to be resolved in some way. Just given the nature of how it's happened, as well as the protective factors of having an involved mother, would have been extremely protective against like serious trauma reactions for somebody like this. So, as much as this is a terrible story, there are some protective factors in there. And actually, the other protective factor that I like is walking away with this kind of closure, get the paternity test done, because I see people in their 30s and later going, well, hang on. Now that my brain is fully developed, if I was in his position and prevented from doing a paternity test, I can actually see in a twisted way where he's coming from. And now I'm not sure that I would want to have blown up that relationship if he was or was not my dad, and I don't know to have that information. Whereas he's walking away with information. Again, I'm not saying the thinking pathway there is valid. I don't care about that. What I'm saying is these are the things that start to kind of niggle on people later in life to go, geez, I wish I knew that thing. All right. So, yeah. Outside of that, what a rubbish situation. Is there a pathway forward? Yeah, there's lots. This person can go and make a life for themselves without their family and probably have a happy and fulfilling life. I think at some point they're probably going to end up missing their mother just because of that attachment that was there. There's going to be a point at which they realize that this stuff gets complicated, so don't hear it wrong. They will come to a point where they understand the relentlessness of defending your child over the same defenses and copying the consequences for years and years and years and years. Right? Again, solvable. Could get a person a paternity test, but she doesn't. And sort of go, okay, I can understand how my mum potentially could get worn down over that period. I might be able to forgive sort of that post 11 years old experience on the basis that my mother has otherwise sort of had a good relationship, etc. They're things that can change in the future, given that the attachment with the mother at least seems to be reasonably intact from the information that we have access to. So yeah, all right, that's all we've got for today. An interesting one. Yeah, I was worried when I saw the wall of text, but not bad. And curiously well written in terms of the details that's included. Some people might have noticed I've stopped asking, is this, rage bait or is it real? I've realized that as a psychologist, I kind of am biased towards believing people when they tell me stuff, simply because there's not a whole lot of point in disbelieving people. And so I'm always biased towards going, oh, that's not creative writing. Somebody like this could definitely exist. I realized that I was going to say that on every single video, and it became a pointless question. So that's why that question went missing. Um, I admit that bias straight up, but it's a bias that is very useful as a psychologist. It's not that I don't ever sit and think. I frequently wonder whether or not people are telling me the truth, but I make the conscious choice to just believe people. And yeah, these sorts of situations, they absolutely happen. I have worked with several people whose story, whilst completely different to this, has enough similarities to go, yeah, this isn't even that unusual of a situation. So we shall finish up there. Good to see everyone again, whoever's watching. And I will catch you, well, probably tomorrow. I'm doing them daily at the moment because I'm having fun. So I'll probably catch you tomorrow for another one. All right. See you.